Today we're going to explore self-realization. But before we go into self-realization, so a question worth asking yourself is, what does realization actually mean for you? When you say, I've realized this, what does it actually mean? Perhaps the answer lies in the word realization, which is making it real, which is the first part of the word. Realization is really about something that is made more real for you. And what makes it real is potentially your experience, your direct experience, because what we say is real is usually indexed on this word experience. If you haven't experienced it, it's not real for you. Even though we may say that experiences themselves are not real, but that's a secondary point. But for the purposes of this talk, realization is all about you making it real for you, and so it is with the self as well. So when you're saying that you have realized the self, or you've had self-realization, then the self is real for you, right? So, and herein comes an interesting question that we know that the self cannot be known, it cannot be experienced. So if it can't be known, it can't be experienced, because if it is experienced, then that's not the self. Then that's another experience, yet another experience. So how do you realize the self then, if you can't experience it? So let's just park that question for the time being, but go with an example here. So someone gives you a glass of water and says this is water. Now you can't see it. You taste that water. Now the water has some sugar in it, and potentially some salt in it. And so you taste it, and you find a bit of sweetness, a bit of saltiness in the water, and the person tells you this is water. Okay, and you get given that water day in, day out. Or like what happens in most cities, that to kill all the bacteria, they have put in a huge amount of chlorine in the water, and so the water tastes like chlorine, or a bit of it. It's got a very funny taste. And someone gives you that water, and day in, day out you're having that water, and that's what is your understanding of water. So the problem with this is that what others have told you is water is what you then believe to be water. And it's only when you go into maybe another city and you find, or you go to a mountain and you taste the water from a stream, you find, wow, this water tastes very different to the water that I was told was water. So the purpose of this example is that is the case with self-realization. A lot of people believe they have achieved self-realization because someone has told them. Someone's told them that you're self-realized, or their mind has told them. So it's less likely someone has told them compared to the mind telling them that they are self-realized. And why does the mind tell them? Because the mind has got this goal. I want to be self-realized. So somewhere it is considered as an achievement to be self-realized, and you want to be self-realized. So what do? You make it up. And you imagine. So when you look at other people's experiences, someone says, "When I'm self-realized, I'm in bliss." Someone says, "When I'm self-realized, I'm thoughtless." Okay. Someone says, "When I'm self-realized, when I'm self-realized, I'm at peace." So you pick all these attributes together and you munge up what you now, this is your water, and you're drinking from that Kool-Aid, and you basically say, this is self-realization based on what I've heard from other people. And so the mind makes you believe that you've had that experience and you are self-realized. And so it is. A lot of people lead their lives in this fake realization of the self. So the question is then, how to avoid it? How do you get past it? Well, there are lots of pitfalls. The mind is quite powerful. So in trying to, there is no clear answer around, how you can avoid being deceived by the mind. You can only do that once you have awareness of the mind, awareness of the activities of the mind. In most cases, there is virtually no awareness of the mind and the thoughts in the mind. So the mind misleads you into believing something, and the next thing you know is that you believe that to be true, and then that's your self-realization. So how do you know you are realized? Have you realized the self? Well, we know that there is no experience of the self, but we do know that, and it's been described in lots of places, what connecting to the self is. So connecting to the self will lead you into this state of bliss, peace, surrender, non-doership. I mean, these are all different terms that you have heard. So you know what connecting is. So what you need to do is connect. And how do you connect? Sometimes that connection happens when you are looking at nature. Sometimes that connection happens when you're contemplating. Sometimes that connection happens when you're in awareness. It can happen with any number of experiences. Every experience can make the penny drop for you. Any and every experience can do that for you. It's only possible for an experience to get you connected to the self when you are in that state of alertness, awareness, in the state of being. Now, I know these terms could be quite confusing, but if you're doing nothing, if you're in that state of silence and stillness, you're doing nothing, and all of a sudden you can connect to yourself. All those mental processes, the beliefs, the conditionings, and everything else is parked. It's not there. It's not visible. And then at that point in time, you're connected to yourself. So the more you connect to yourself, the more you then start your experience of your experience of connecting becomes more defined. And the more defined that experience becomes, the more um, realized you become. Then you start realizing, this is the self. This is what people were talking about when people were talking about the self. But that is only possible when you connect. So people may ask, well, if you can imagine self-realization, or you can make up self-realization, you can also make up this connecting with the self. Of course, you can. You can always make up connecting to the self. But the distinction here is, when you're connecting to yourself, you will yourself know whether that is make-believe or it is real. You will see a difference in the way you are, and all you have to be is aware of yourself when you're connecting. When you're connecting, you're at peace. When you're connecting, you're still, silent. You have all this myriads of mental activity are not there, are absent. And so the connection, it may so happen that the connection is transient, it's fleeting, it is it's at a superficial kind of level. You believe I am peaceful, but in the background some thoughts are kind of coming. But the more deeper you get into it, the more you connect, the more you unravel, the mind, and you start viewing the mind. You start watching the mind. You start watching the activities of the mind. And the key to a lot of this is actually awareness. You are aware of your feelings. You're definitely aware of your actions. When you perform an actions, you're quite aware of the actions, because the actions are the most most visible, so to speak. They are physical actions that you're performing. So it's quite those things are, you're aware of your actions. You're aware of the things that are happening outside you. Similarly, when you go a little deeper and you start looking at your feelings, you are, some people are aware of their feelings. A lot of people are not. But you can associate a feeling of anger, of resentment, and with a particular situation. So at least you will be aware of the situation. You will be aware then of the feeling as well, of the emotion as well. And the more closely you start looking at, so you ask yourself this question: how do I feel? How am I feeling now? How did I feel when I got up? How did I feel yesterday? I mean, these questions start bringing the feelings into that field of awareness. And the more you ask these questions, the more you start becoming aware of your feelings. So the next step then is to go a bit deeper and start bringing your thoughts into that field of awareness. How am I feeling? Yeah, I'm feeling angry. What is my thought process at this point? Oh, I'm agitated. Lots of thoughts are coming into my mind. What sort of thoughts are coming into my mind? What am I thinking? Oh, I want to murder that person. Or I want to kill that person. I want to have revenge. Or I want to do this or that. Those are the thoughts that are coming in. So all of a sudden the thoughts have suddenly become visible to you. And as the thoughts have become visible to you, you'll also discover that when you have intense feelings, the thought process, the thoughts are quite active at that point. But slowly, there are times when you're sitting, just contemplating, or maybe just sitting there doing nothing. The thoughts have sort of gone down. They've simmered down and they're very subtle. There are still some thoughts, but they're subtle. So try watching those thoughts. Try observing those thoughts. The more you try to observe those thoughts, you then go deeper and you start observing your ego, your even more subtle processes that surround that ego. And so more you get into it, the deeper you get into it, it suddenly makes everything that is happening, from action, from feelings, from thoughts, from ego, all the way up from really gross things to subtle things, very visible. And the more visible these things become, the more you then start observing whether you're really connecting with the self or not. If you're really connecting with the self, you will then know. For most people, if they haven't had that preparation, they don't know. There's the experience is a fake experience. Someone says to them, you've connected with the self. Or your mind says to you, you've connected with the self, and you are the self. And yet they assume that that is what it is. So we'll leave it for now and talk about connecting a bit later on. Thank you.